Quick Change is an American crime comedy movie about a trio of robbers including a couple, Grim and Phyllis, and their best friend, Loomis, who execute a successful bank robbery. However, things don't work out in their favor when luck deserts them right after the heist, as a series of incidents hindered them from fleeing the country. The film opens on a subway train in Manhattan, where Grim is dressed as a clown. He exits the subway with a bunch of balloons and starts walking across the streets to rob a bank in Midtown Manhattan. As he reaches the bank, he sees its security guard closing the door on him as it's closing time. Grim stops the gate from closing by slipping his foot in between and pointing a gun at the security guard. The old age guard gets scared and relents, causing Grim to enter the bank. Upon entry into the bank, Grim opens his shirt and reveals his waist to the security guard, showing him fake dynamite strapped all over it. The security guard is surprised to encounter such a kind of robber and hands him his gun before escorting him inside the bank. To gain attention from the bank staff and the public inside, Grim makes an underwhelming announcement by saying it's a robbery. Despite the security guard backing his claim, no one pays any heed to it. However, when Grim fires his gun in the air, everyone is startled and surrenders themselves by holding their hands behind their heads. The bank manager manages to press the emergency alert button before surrendering. A scared customer starts whining about his death, so Grim takes the opportunity to scare him a bit more by pointing a gun right at his head and asking him to stop whining. He creates a hostage situation by asking everyone not to move. However, he loses his cool when he sees a dog not following his order. In the meantime, the Manhattan police start approaching the bank and clearing the area to avoid any mishaps. Inside the bank, Grim starts escorting everyone into a vault and locks them up, however warning them that if they try to enter the bank, the robber will blow up the dynamite strapped on him. Princeton follows the order by doing as told. Meanwhile, on the outside, the police are all set in positions to fire the robber once they see him leaving the exit door, because apparently the bank only has one exit way. The chief of the police department, named Rodziger, arrives and is ready to negotiate with the robber on his terms. Meanwhile, on the inside, some hostages seem calm, while others can't stop whining. One of them even records his will for the family as he thinks he'll die soon. All of a sudden, everyone is startled to hear gunshots. It turns out that Grim finally realized that he has to get rid of the surveillance camera, so he shoots multiple times and finally hits the right spot the third time. Just then, he receives a phone call from the chief of police, inquiring him about the gunshots heard. Grim assures him that they were just to get rid of the cameras. He introduces himself as Chip to the chief. Meanwhile, the police try to enter the bank through the heating vent, but Grim forces them to abort their plan by lying that he planted explosives everywhere. The chief gets frightened and offers to negotiate. When he asks Grim to release 12 hostages, Grim demands a city bus with a full tank of gas, a monster truck, a motorcycle, and 2 choppers, in exchange for 1 hostage each. At first, the chief disapproves his demand and intends to break into the bank, but when Grim threatens to blow away all the hostages, he relents and agrees to meet Grim's demands. Meanwhile, the hostages quarrel on deciding who will leave the bank first. When Grim asks them who should leave, all of them point to the whining guy, who's about to throw up. Finally, a chopper is brought, and in exchange, Grim releases 1 hostage. While the hostage leaves, Grim keeps packing stacks of cash for the robbery. When he enters the vault, a hostage tries to bribe him with his expensive watch. However, Grim refuses to take it for free and instead buys it for $300. A rebellious hostage calls Grim a coward for using a gun to terrorize innocent people. Realizing that she could stir trouble for everyone, the remaining hostages vote for her release, and she, along with another hostage, is released when a motorcycle and public bus are provided to Grim. Finally, the monster truck also arrives, and when the chief calls Grim to inform him about it, he doesn't answer the call. Rodziger decides to storm the bank if Grim doesn't reach back to him in 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, just when Rodziger is about to storm in, he receives a call from an anonymous number who is none other than Grim, asking to give him a few more minutes. It's revealed that Grim already fled the bank and is calling Rodziger through a telephone booth. After making the call, Grim meets his accomplices. That is his girlfriend, Phyllis, and his best buddy, Loomis, and they celebrate their victory of executing a flawless robbery. While Phyllis and Grim reminisce about their proposal, Loomis ogles them from afar. Before escaping town, Grim makes a last phone call to Rodziger, who informs him that the monster truck is ready. Grim fools him by asking him to bring another monster truck according to his choice, making Rodziger angry. Just then, Loomis mistakenly honks the horn, making Rodziger suspicious. Loomis apologizes to Grim and Phyllis for his mistake, and then the trio leaves for the airport. Meanwhile, Rodziger replays the phone call to hear the car horn, and figures out that the robber has already fled the bank and is out and about somewhere. On the other hand, the robbers try to get away with $1 million, but the getaway becomes complicated for them. To get to the airport, Loomis seeks the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, but the signs were removed during construction work. resulting in the three robbers becoming lost in an unknown neighborhood. Meanwhile, the cops storm the bank, after which Ratzinger enters it only to find that the robber is already escaped. On the other hand, the robbers try to ask the construction workers to guide them in the direction of the expressway, but the workers are clueless about it. The police try to rescue the hostages out of the vault, which Grimm had left locked. Unable to find the way to the airport, Loomis tries to seek help from a stranger, but instead witnesses a bell ringing, which according to him brings bad luck. Phyllis starts getting nervous as the relatively simple task of getting to the airport seems more complicated than carrying out an elaborate heist. On their way, they encounter a nobleman and try to ask him the way to the airport. However, it turns out that he's a con man, disguised as a commoner. He robs the trio of everything they have, but fails to get the bank money that they have taped on their waist and under their clothes. After the thief leaves, Phyllis berates Loomis for honking the car horn, which has eaten up their time to escape. She wants to tell Grimm something, but keeps getting interrupted by Loomis. The trio decides to change their clothes before heading to the airport, so they head towards Phyllis's apartment. In the meantime, the hostages are escorted into a bus, and Ratzinger is even more determined to catch the robbers. On the other hand, the trio changes into new clothes at Phyllis's apartment, and just when they're about to leave, a fire breaks out across the street, and the fire department arrives and starts pushing Loomis's car away from the hydrant. While the trio is watching the scene from the window, the new tenant arrives and guns them down, thinking that they are robbers. Phyllis is worried as their flight to Fiji is about to take off in 41 minutes, whereas Loomis is restless to see his car getting pushed away by the firefighters. While Grimm tries to calm down the paranoid tenants, their car rolls downhill and crashes into the bushes. On the other hand, Ratzinger realizes that the second round of released hostages, which includes a rebellious girl and a guy, has gone missing, and quickly understands that they were accomplices of the clown. Meanwhile, the trio tries to get a taxi to the airport, even though they missed the flight to Fiji. Just then, Phyllis loses her cool after finding out that Grimm has booked another flight for them just for safety. She calls him a world-class bank robber for planning an elaborate heist and keeping things from her and Loomis. Grimm tries to make her understand that once they flee the town, they'll lead a dignified life, just as she has been planning for the last 6 months. Just then, they see a tow truck carrying their crashed car, and the crooked Loomis breaks into tears, pleading with God to send a cab for them. All of a sudden, a cab stops by, and the three of them get in it ecstatically. However, the driver turns out to be a foreigner who is non-fluent in English. Grimm lays back, relaxed, after telling the driver to take them to the airport. While the driver drives, Phyllis apologizes to Grimm for her crazy mood swings. Grimm once again reassures the driver to take them to the airport by showing him a picture of a plane. While Grimm and Phyllis are busy romancing in the back seat, Loomis struggles to tell the driver to follow the traffic signals. Exasperated, he walks out of the moving taxi and runs into a newsstand on the roadside. Grimm and Phyllis race out of the taxi to see Loomis, who has knocked himself unconscious. The crowd starts gathering around and thinking that he's killed Loomis. The taxi driver runs away in his taxi. The storekeeper nearby reports to the cops about the incident. As soon as Ratzinger finds out about it, he suspects that the incident must be linked to the robbers. He quickly sends all nearby units to the scene, but before they could reach there, Loomis gains consciousness and the three of them leave the place. The hysterical taxi driver returns and tries to turn himself in. While the police are busy talking to the driver, they miss the trio. Having nowhere else to go, Grimm enters a building only to discover that it is a gambling warehouse crawling with corrupt men. Grimm uses his wits to trick the gambling leader into thinking that he's the man named Lombino, the major crime boss whom he owes money, and ends up getting $6,000 from the leader. They leave the building, and Phyllis can't help herself from getting turned on after witnessing her boyfriend rip off the mob. Just then, Grimm sees a bus, and the trio race towards it to catch it. However, the bus driver turns out to be excessively orderly and fussy about the fare, and asks Grimm to give him the exact amount of fare. Though Grimm offered him $100, the bus driver refuses. Grimm steps down from the bus to get change. Evading the police officers, he enters a store, only to find a cashier who is severely sluggish. Finally, he gets the change and rushes out of the store. At the same time, the bagman for the real Lombino, named Mario Minetti, enters the gambling warehouse and is kicked out from there. Mario and the taxi driver both spot Grimm and pursue him. However, Grimm manages to get on the bus just in time, after which the bus leaves. Mario is taken captive as Ratzinger has been after Lombino for quite some time. On the other hand, while Grimm inquires the bus driver about the time left to reach the airport, Phyllis tells Loomis that she is expecting a baby. Loomis becomes excited after hearing the news and questions her if she's told Grimm about it. However, Phyllis elucidates that she's not planning to tell Grimm about the baby as she thinks that he won't prove to be a good father. Time and time again, Loomis made her think that Grimm is made for the underworld and has it in his genes to carry out illegal activities, which is why Phyllis feels hesitant to have a child with a father of this kind. Meanwhile, Ratzinger interrogates Mario about his crime boss. Just then, the cops bring in the foreign taxi driver who tries to explain to Ratzinger that the robbers fled on a bus to the airport. Without calling the interpreter, Ratzinger understands what the taxi driver wants to convey. On the other hand, when a hippie struggles to enter the bus, Grimm hands him $6,000 to quit entering and live his life freely. The relentless Ratzinger persistently attempts to nab the fleeing trio and orders his team to quietly pull over and board all number 9 buses. Finally, the trio reaches the airport stop and walks towards the airport. On their way, they encounter a strange lady with flowers. When Phyllis tells them that she's holding the flowers for the dead, Loomis bursts into tears thinking that it's a bad luck symbol, indicating that they're all going to die. Just then, the luggage towing truck appears and Loomis blows Phyllis's gaff by indicating to Grimm that she's pregnant. Meanwhile, when Ratzinger does not find the robbers in the bus, he takes it upon himself to find the trio and drives to the airport. On the other hand, Grimm is upset with Phyllis for keeping the news of her pregnancy from him. In the meantime, Ratzinger arrives at the airport and is ready to catch the robbers once they pass the metal detectors unharmed. The trio finally enters the airport and Grimm goes to fetch the boarding passes, after which they decide to split up as the police are on the lookout for 2 men and 1 woman. Phyllis decides to split up with Grimm as she doesn't think that he's going to go back to the way he was before the robbery. Grimm tries to reassure her that he did what he had to do just to save the trio from getting caught. He then hands her the boarding pass and asks her to meet him on the plane. When Grimm and Loomis enter the plane, they are heartbroken to see that Phyllis is not there. Grimm asks Loomis to take the flight and decides to exit the plane to find Phyllis. However, just then, Ratzinger storms into the plane and catches the king of mobsters, Lombino, who apparently is also boarding this exact very same plane. Grimm and Loomis help Ratzinger arrest Lombino, the major crime boss, during which Grimm also finds Phyllis in the bathroom stall. After Lombino is arrested, Ratzinger thanks Grimm for his assistance and asks him his name. Grimm introduces himself as Dan Chapowski, after which Ratzinger leaves and the plane takes off. The film ends with Ratzinger realizing that Chapowski was the bank robber, but it's too late, as the plane has already taken off. And with that, the movie ends. If you've made it to the end and enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and also subscribe to the channel to never miss out on future videos from Dude Recaps.